Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can.
Good morning, Mateo. How are you?
Brother, I am fantastic. How are you?
It's been a whirlwind of a week, truly, since last Thursday to today, but it's all good. I'm excited to. What's that?
Good. I said you are good. You look good. You sound good. It's good to see you.
I've had some pretty interesting conversations, so that's positive. And for those that are wondering what the hell we're talking about, this will come out in a few weeks. I'm no longer with Hopper as of last Thursday. So that's what we're alluding to, and I'm excited to stay in the industry. I'm excited to find my next role. I've had some amazing conversations already, and I look forward to having more amazing conversations before I make any sort of decision. So I feel that I put myself in a pretty decent place, and excited to see where things go from here. But with that said, I want to dive right into our guest today. Super excited to have Marcus Räder of Hostaway join us, founder and CEO of Hostaway. Thanks so much for joining us, Marcus. Appreciate you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here. I like everything that has the word no BS in it. That's one of the things we always say within Hostaway, that we tell new employees in the training. It's not tolerated.
We appreciate that. It's hard sometimes. It's hard when you're fed so much different information from so many perspectives. And, and this perspective is telling you that this is the truth. And this perspective is telling you this is the truth. And from their perspective, it might be the truth. And it's our job as podcast hosts and facilitators of conversation to at least allow it to be put out there from every direction and not necessarily take a side. Sometimes we do take a side because we're like, this is bullshit, and we have to take a side. But then sometimes we put in a position where if we take a side, it's not that we're condoning bullshit. It's more that, now we're looking at a perspective as opposed to actual truth. And that's where it gets challenging.
Oh, challenge accepted. You can call BS on me anytime, and let's see how many times you do it. Where I'm very transparent and open, and I always tell people, well, I had to limit it to only our staff, but I tell them, look, I have not once been asked a question that I wasn't able to answer, or where I said I'm not going to answer that. And I have never given a false answer either, or a fake answer, or a vague answer. I give direct answers. And so far, nobody. I mean, there's many questions they could ask that I won't answer, but they don't ask those questions. Mm-hmm. It's really fascinating, because when you tell them you have the ability to ask anything you want, and so far nobody has asked anything that I wouldn't answer, then they ask tough questions, and I do give them answers.
Well, I hope to have some tough questions for you. Maybe we can stump you. Probably not. Sounds like it's going to be hard to do, but maybe we can stump you. Let's dive into how the hell did you get into the vacation rental space, first of all? But to get there, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I started in the about section of your LinkedIn profile. I started my first company when I was 11. What the hell? Really? So let's talk to us about how the entrepreneur in you and in starting your first company at 11. Tell us your story.
Yeah, so I grew up. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 1 year old, and so I grew up with my single mom, and we shared a very small apartment in a suburb in Finland, which today is quite a great country, very wealthy, has a lot of technology from there. But back in the 80s and 90s, it was on the brink of disaster, because their biggest trading partner, the Soviet, had just collapsed, and of course my mom lost her job. So things weren't looking so bright when I was a kid, and I was always wondering, how does it work? How come some people are rich and some people are poor? Why is that? And I started looking for opportunities everywhere I went, and then at some point I started getting some money. I don't know, maybe my mom gave me some allowance, or I got collecting bottles, and I was figuring, hey, this is great, because there's a clear line here between having no money and having some money. But if you have some money, how can you make it more? And I was always hustling with children in the playgrounds and trying to figure out how can we make money together. But it was really at school that I realized that a lot of my friends, they had regular money coming in. They had a weekly allowance, and they mostly
Right.
use it to buy candy. And the challenge with candy is when you take money and you convert it into candy, either you're going to save the candy and it gets old, or you're going to eat it and it's gone. The money is never coming back. And that's when I found the opportunity. I gave my friends a proposal. Hey, how about you buy double the amount of candy this week, and then you pay me back next week? So I gave them payday loans and at a massive interest rate, and it became very lucrative very fast until their parents found out, and they were not
I
not
fucking love
happy at
this.
all. They had a meeting with the teachers, and they said that this is the financial industry and loans are regulated, and it's actually illegal to give it to minors, which is true. And they shut me down. But that's when I learned my first lesson on you got to do research on your industry. And actually research is what I really love doing. So I spent my teenage years doing surveys. The interesting thing with market research companies is that there's all kind of tasks available, but if your job is to hand them out to usually young people, teenagers who are looking to make some money, you need to choose the right task for the right person. So I've been a mystery shopper at McDonald's, and I've been handed, assignments that nobody else could deal with, like go to the airport and interview 100 people and get them to answer these questions after they're tired after their flight. And I was always the one who said, I can do that. So then I went on to university, and there again, my thesis, I thought, how can I make it cool and get a good grade? I know I'll use that experience and just go and ask people on the street. And I did a survey and interviewed 100 people, random people on the street, about mobile games, which was a pretty big upcoming industry in 2006. It really blew up in around 2010 with the iPhone. And since then, I've been working in tech startups, lots of them, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's always been on my mind that one day I'm going to start my own, because it just makes sense to be at the top. And in hindsight, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's 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 really really tough. There's an expression in Finland that says it's windy at the top, and it really is, but it's fun also.
So Marcus, so taking that task, right? Like at an early age, you were able to be comfortable, getting and extracting information from people, and not just any information that was valuable to somebody else, and finding that value. What the way that you explain the story now makes it seem like it was easy. Was it easy for you? And what did you do that made you successful in that space? Because that's a challenging thing to do. Adults can't do that.
I think humans, there are things that you can improve and you can learn, and there's also certain character traits that you simply either have it or you don't. And if you don't have it, you will have to fake it, and it's going to be really hard. I think a lot of sports is like that. Some people are just not cut out for certain sports. And I think one of my main benefits that I always had is I can go up to a stranger, I can ask them anything. I can't get them to do anything, but I can get them to, invest their attention and time into me. And that's something that I really enjoyed. And so since that's part of my character, it was quite an easy job to walk up to strangers on the street and convince them to answer stupid questions for 5 minutes.
Is there any question, or is there any survey or something that was proposed to you that you decided, that's not really for me? Or did you just always be like, just go with the flow and say fuck it and ask whatever?
Yeah, there was one about public transport. I was supposed to ask people what they think about the ticket prices and the service level of the bus system, and I thought that's probably the most boring thing I'll ever do in my life. But as an entrepreneur, I know that there's way more boring things you can do.
Love it. So, I mean, so you're going through, you're at this startup for a couple of years, you're at this startup for 6 months, you're kind of doing your different thing, helping yourself. You're a product manager for a while, doing some different things. And now you founded Hostaway, it was 7.5 years ago now. What was the turning point where you said, I'm not working for someone else? I am an entrepreneur. I've been doing this thing. I've been driving myself in like to do all these things. But like, why Hostaway and why short-term rentals?
I think it should have actually been about 10 years or even 15 years before that when me and my friends in university, we started something that today would be called Airbnb for boats.
Okay.
And this was in 2002. So we thought there's a lot of boats there. Nobody has time to use them because the rich people are too busy. But there's a lot of people who would like to use them, but they don't want to buy and they can't afford to buy, so they would like to rent. And you can build a website for that. And that was our idea, and it failed. And there were a couple of other attempts as well. But I moved to Canada in 2015 with my wife, and I did not look forward to getting a job. The tech scene in Toronto today is amazing, but back then it was just bubbling under. And there's been many successes since, but it wasn't really a job market that I was looking forward to. And what really amazed me was how professional the Airbnb, let's call it, movement, well, at least in 2015, I would call it the Airbnb movement was,
Right.
and how many property managers there were. I love real estate, and I'm a big believer in the sharing economy. I think resources overall on this planet are limited, and well, they just said humanity has stopped growing. We're at 8 billion now, and it's not going to go higher, which is probably a good thing for everyone involved,
I
especially.
I agree.
Yeah, and but the thing is, we have to share more. Those boats that are owned by one person or one family, and they use them 3 times a year, and the rest of the year they sit empty. That shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have that. We should
Especially
have
when
more sharing of the resources overall. So that's why I was so fascinated. But what really got me into this business, I interviewed 40 property managers, and my market research background, it was easy for
Yeah.
me to just pick up the phone and get 40 people to spend an hour with me. And what I found out, it took me about a couple of months. What I found out is that there's a massive opportunity here, and this market doesn't really exist. You couldn't find data on how big the short-term rentals were back then. Today you
My,
can
my
find
question for you,
find data.
Marcus, to pause on that about, back in 2015 or when you're doing this research, there wasn't a ton of data in Canada or there wasn't a ton of data overall? Because, you said there's huge opportunity. Were you first looking at a Toronto, Montreal, Quebec, like the opportunity there? Because property management software that was, had been around a little bit here in the States, was only focusing on the States. They weren't focusing, in the Great White North, So did you see an opportunity because no one was capitalizing on Canadian opportunity, or was it overall?
No, this was global. What actually happened was that Airbnb, they were able, back in the early days in 2009, they were able to basically create a new marketplace that they didn't have to compete with anyone. So there were other marketplaces, Vrbo, HomeAway, where properties that are on a beach, they can be rented
Right.
out. and
Vacation
and
destinations.
yeah,
Yes, but Airbnb was create able to create a supply or inventory in places where Vrbo had no properties in the cities.
Right.
And as they were the ones who created that supply, they had a monopoly on it. They had 100% market share in there. That's what I found really fascinating. How most businesses, they see a cake and they say, "I want a piece of that cake," but Airbnb created an entirely different cake that today we know is merged. You can rent a beach
Right.
house on Airbnb, and you can go to Vrbo and find a place in a city. But back then it was a different world, and that really fascinated me, how a company can just create their own cake rather than trying to steal pieces from their competitors.
And now everyone wants their cake.
right.
Yes,
And they've been
yes.
wanting their cake, and you wanted a piece of that cake, and obviously, and that's why you decided to go ahead and start up and roll up with Hostaway. Like how what was that first year or even that 6 months like how were you going ahead and getting these first property managers to come on board, because you're building something that is a little bit different because you have a different focus. I mean, my assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, is your focus is I need to connect to Airbnb because I need to give these hosts the ability to go ahead and have greater tools to actually to utilize the infrastructure that Airbnb already built into a and give these hosts greater potential moving forward. And there's some others that are doing it today in that focusing on that direction as well. But like how is that first 6 months to a year, and what did that look like?
I would say it's basically 2 or even 3 years. It was very interesting. I mean, it took us about 2 years to develop the product itself, and it took me even 6 months to find my co-founders to and start the company.
Right.
And I speak to a lot of people that are at that stage, and they never seem to get through it. They never seem to continue, and they say, "Oh, I have an even better idea," or "No, I got a good job offer," and they just give up on it. And it's really like walking through a desert, and you're first you're low on water. That's how you start, but then you run out of water, and you never know when you're gonna die, and you never know when the desert's gonna end. That's what it's like until there's not even a moment when you see the light, but rather it's a strange transition. Suddenly there's so much going on that you don't even notice, and one day you wake up and you look around you and you're in the jungle and there's water again. It's really, I don't know any other way to explain it. It's a really, really strange and amazing journey at the same time. And it's so hard. It's incredibly difficult because you need to go out and you need to sell your idea to everyone. A lot of people think you can start a business and just get some customers. No, you need to sell the idea to your wife, to your family, to your friends, because those are needed, because you're going to have
That's
hard
your
times. You,
support.
you need to sell the idea, but you need to sell, then you need to have them resell the idea to yourself, because if nobody is telling you you can't give up, you're going to give up.
Right.
That's the way it works. And you need to sell the idea to yourself, but then you need to sell it to your co-founders and any staff you get on at an early stage. If you have the luxury of having money or investors, you need to sell them the idea as well. So it's just constant selling, but you don't actually have what you're selling because you're just building it. So you're selling a dream to yourself, to your family, to your customers. You're selling a dream to pretty much everyone, and the more you do it, the bigger ambitions you have, and the harder it's going to be to fulfill that. And the pressure eventually is the one that I think breaks most people. They have sold an idea and it wasn't big enough, so they sell a bigger idea and a bigger, and at some point reality just hits that the idea is so big nobody can do it. And it's a balancing act, but it's really, really beautiful that we got through it. And it took a couple more years before we felt secure, but let's say the last 2 years we've been really, really secure, and we're too big to fail, so to speak.
Right.
It must be interesting too to see, your trajectory now being adopted by all of the other and larger platforms, because we have this conversation in our industry, right? We like to, kind of segment professional managers, hosts or whatever, hosts or, individual operators and things of that nature. We have different ways of classifying them. But this push within our industry to professionalize the industry overall and give the operator, no matter what their classification, the tools to operate at a certain space, the technology to operate at a certain space. I remember, when we got in the industry, everyone was focusing on the established professionals. And now there's this huge wave to bring everyone into this kind of professional space, professional operation space. It seems like that's where you started. So, what did you see? What was your crystal ball? What did you see in that desert? What was that oasis that you found in that desert that convinced you were on the right path, and allowed you to get money and build a platform and to continue to grow, into where you are today?
That's a great question, and I wish I would have an answer that enlightens people and they feel really happy. But here's the thing. One advice I got early on was that in order to be successful, you need to speak to successful people and learn from their mistakes. And of course, you need to make mistakes yourself, but that happens whether you want it or not. What I found out is that successful entrepreneurs, they simply don't have the time or energy to speak to unsuccessful entrepreneurs. So the advice that I got was actually BS, because you can't just go up to some billionaire and say, "Hey, I'm an unsuccessful entrepreneur. I've got nothing. Can you spend half an hour with me, please? It would help me a lot." Because they get thousands of people doing that. And it's only in the last couple of years now that I'm recognized as a successful entrepreneur, I suddenly get to speak to the billionaires. And what
Right.
I found is that there's two factors that are incredibly important in all of this, in making decisions, in starting a business, and becoming successful. And those factors are often underestimated. One of them is luck, and the other one is timing. Then you have other things as well. You have ambition, you have vision, you have an idea, maybe you have funding. Those are all great to have, but the biggest contributors to success are always going to be luck and timing. That's at least what I've learned from speaking to successful entrepreneurs. And I think the way the market has shaped itself and the decisions that we made 5 years ago that we're reaping the fruits today, I think a lot of it is luck and timing. I mean, I would love to say that we were just smarter than everyone, but the truth is many other people were smart, equally smart, or even smarter before us and after us, but we were just lucky there with the timing. We happened to be the right kind of smart at the right place at the right time, so to speak.
I also have to be prepared too, because luck and timing don't mean shit if you're not,
Yeah,
if you don't have something to launch and something to take advantage of those two things, right? Like I could be lucky and have great timing in terms of meeting somebody, but completely have a house of cards, right? Like that, I won't be able to take advantage of that. And so it's all of the hard work that's gotten you to that point, right? It's that journey to the mountaintop that you've been up. And once
It's
you're
the foundation.
super windy, yeah, like it's windy at the top, right? But if you're secure in what you built and you're locked in your foundation and you're not going to blow over, then that luck and timing are fortuitous, right? Like at that point.
yeah,
So
I
and you can fake the luck. I don't think you can fake the timing, but the luck you can you can. I spoke to my father and he said, "You've been planting seeds your whole life."
right.
And I was wondering, I asked, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you think you're lucky, but actually, there's a series of things that you have done. You have met certain people, told them certain things, and a few years later, they introduce you to someone. Those are the seeds that you have been planting, and for some people, they never grow. For you, they have been growing. Not all of them, but some have. And the more you plant, the more luckier you're going to get."
I love that.
love
I have a question for you. You're talking of luck and timing, and you're talking about how Hostaway, is come to fruition and it's doing what it's doing, and especially the last 2 years. In your opinion, and I know we're talking competition here, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. What competition, and I'm using air quotes for those of you that are just listening on a podcast and not watching on YouTube, definitely using air quotes. What competition do you think has rested too much on luck and without a solid foundation? And what competition, again, air quotes, do you see will not be around in a year or two?
Really good question, and it's a very timely topic considering there's a huge amount of consolidation going on, and it's quite interesting also how the tech market overall is not so attractive right now, especially the publicly traded tech stocks. But our vacation rental technology is on fire. But speaking of luck and timing, our rocket ship, this is what all tech startups always want. They want the rocket,
Right.
or hockey stick, actually. But
Well, you're Canadian or
yeah,
Finnish. Oh, they both works.
yeah, ours actually took off in December 2019,
Mhm.
which was quite a good timing because it gave us the confidence that we can finally. We've been building it then for
Right.
4 years,
Mhm.
but it took off only in December. Then we saw it, taking off, and after 3 months, it exploded because of COVID. We had about 40% of our customers in Europe, a lot of customers in Canada, and both of those went away. But we got to see what it's like to launch a rocket ship. And during that time, many of our competitors, maybe they never got to see it take off in the first place, and they just gave up. They sold out for a cheap buck, or they simply ran out of steam. Their key
Right.
members quit, and they never got back on their feet. It was around that time when we made some very tough decisions, and we stuck to them. We didn't let anything distract us, and we followed through on a strategy, and that's what got us on the growth trajectory, and that's what made sure that we were successful when so many failed during COVID.
What was life like in November 2019? Where were you at prior to that? Because there was such a seismic shift, right? Like when COVID hit for so many people, but everyone went into it in different spaces. Where were you at? Where were you at in November 2019?
I mean, we were there where we had been the last 4 years before that. It's make it or break it.
Right.
Now is our chance. This is chance number 25. If if we don't succeed, we're gonna go bankrupt, just like we did the other 24 times where we didn't really go bankrupt, but probably would have, unless we had the energy to do attempt 23 and 22, and before that we had number
Right.
21. And to see it actually take off in December was an amazing feeling. But I just wish we had a winning streak, or that we would have at least stopped and celebrated, because it was so devastating to realize you had been winning, but you never even raised a glass of champagne with anyone, because you had been for 4 years working on the winning path, and you got it for 3 months, and then it's gone again. Then it's just gone.
And then the
Um,
rebound, you have no time to, to celebrate either, because when it came back, it was gangbusters, and there's a lot of more work to do. And you're
yeah,
feeling that right now. There's a lot more work to do to keep going in that trajectory. Um,
exactly. But speaking of the competition, so there's right now some bigger groups that are trying to take over this market, and there's basically they can fall into two camps. Either they believe in a winner takes it all, or they don't. And
right.
one interesting thing though is that we're quite different from most of our competition, or most of the other camps, in that we actually get to formulate our own opinions. We're not run by investors, and that gives us the freedom to say what we want, to do what we want, but it also gives us the freedom to destroy our company if we choose to.
Right. So
Um,
you raised a little bit, correct? I mean, it's not straight bootstrap, but at the same time, you're not VC run.
yeah, exactly. So we're what I would say independent. We raised about 2 million to get to where we are today, and that was pretty much necessary, because one thing that I also learned from a lot of these successful people that I've spoken to, what really helps you start a company is, before you even have your idea ready, if you can just make sure that you're super super rich, that will make everything a lot easier.
Yeah, like that's great advice.
And in hindsight, that was probably the one thing that I wish we would have done differently with Hostaway. I think, if we could have just been really rich when we started it, a lot of things would have been, like, a lot of problems would have been not even created in the first place. But you learn as you live.
It's so funny. I mean, so talking of the two camps, we have a newer, large star camp. And then we have which is the same kind of camp that the inhabit camp. So we have two large companies that are kind of, fallen together. And so that's one direction. And it's not a wrong direction, it's a different direction. And, as far as proprietary software and how they're going about it, and with the consolidation of all these different brands and all these different things, is a direction. Then you have the direction of yourself, and which is, we're a software solution, and we're going to go ahead, but we're not mandated or run by money, per se, that it is calling the shots. There's no board that's telling us what we can and cannot do. And you are then in a handful. There's 20 of you. There's 30 of you overall that are in this group of software that are all kind of trying to get going after the same pieces of pie, right? You're all trying to get the same users. You're trying to go ahead. So what to kind of stay back with this competition? Which one of those, not the larger, which one of those is not going to be around in your by 2024? If there's 20 of you right now, there's going to be 12 of you by 2024. Who's gone?
So what I can say from the data that we've seen is that right now, especially this year has been great, both in Europe and US and Australia, which typically that's where most of the Western revenue in this is. There's a large market in Asia, but let's be honest, you can't really enter the Chinese short-term rental market unless you're focused on that.
Right. It's a whole different animal.
Exactly. So this year has been good for everyone. The rising tide raises all boats, or something like that. But but I think next year we're gonna see something. Well, we're already seeing that the smaller companies in the space that are growing, they are not growing as fast as the bigger companies. And that to me is a strong sign that they're actually shouldn't be growing at all. They're only growing because a rising tide raises all boats. So if you got someone who's 10 times bigger than you and they're growing at double the speed that you are, there's just you're going to be gone.
Right.
It's that simple. And that's what's going to happen. So we got a couple of bigger groups here. We got Greater Sun Ventures, sorry, Inhabit IQ. We
Right.
got Cloudbeds. We got Guesty, and I think well, we got Track as well. I think they
Yeah.
will be a strong, or TravelNet will be maybe the fourth group. But it's worth keeping in mind that some of these groups are already on the way out. I'm not gonna say the name, but there's some that made a lot of noise about a couple of years ago, and suddenly they don't make too much noise because they haven't been growing. But some of these are growing way faster than a lot of smaller companies, and that means they're going to get acquired. Just was it a few weeks ago? Track bought rented.com,
Yeah. Yep.
and I'm only speculating. I have no facts here, but I would believe that rented.com is one of those companies who saw perhaps a modest growth, but definitely not to the scale of the Guesties and the Cloudbeds,
Well, yeah,
and
and
that's why
rented
they got acquired.
is
Yeah, I mean,
is
they're
a
a
revenue.
revenue management. Yeah, they're a service and a revenue management company, right? So, who in your space that does what you do, right? Do you feel in we'll put it in the most jovial terms, in because we're hospitality and everybody loves each other. But who do you enjoy competing against the most? Like, who do you see, when you look in the mirror or look beside you and you're running this race to the top of the mountain, you know, who is there for you? Is it those companies you just named? Is it others? You know, who's your competition? Who's really your competition?
That's a really good question. I was actually one of our account executives. We were on a call the other day, and he listed a bunch of these, and he said something along the line of, "Oh, but these aren't really our competition. I mean, they're not even in our league." And I thought that was so great to hear. That's I mean, he's listing our direct competitors to do exactly what we do,
Right.
and then he goes out and says, "Yeah, but they're not in our league," which I think summarizes the culture here at Hostaway. Which of the competitors do we like? I really do. This is capitalism. Capitalism is a game that's very simple. It's like the board game Monopoly. There's going to be one winner, and you don't really need the best properties to win. You don't need the best strategy to win. There's one thing that makes you the winner, and that's having all the money. And that's how capitalism works. It's not fair, and sometimes it's a bit rigged, but it is the game. The game is the game. That's what I learned from a TV show called The Wire, which is a great TV show for any entrepreneur. And I like to follow those who have the money. I like to see what is Guesty doing, what is Cloudbeds doing. Those that have raised over 100 million, because and it's exciting to win against them. Then on the other hand, what I really like is winning against competitors that didn't consider us competition. That's one of my favorite. When you
Love
ask
that.
them, if you go to them and ask who are your competitors, they're never going to say Hostaway because they don't even know we exist. And then we just go in and we have a very targeted campaign and we take all their customers. That's what I really enjoy doing. Unfortunately, I'm not so active on the sales side anymore. I've been selling my whole life, and sometimes you need a break. So I'm more active on the marketing side these days.
Great answer. I know we're running out of time, but we wanted to kind of go, tell us about, we talk a lot about, pre-recording here, we talked about, your rock star hair, and we want to talk about you as a company, and you as Marcus, you don't give a fuck. And I love that about you. And at least that's the vibe you push out. It's like, you care. And let me restate that. You care a lot, but you don't give a shit what other people think, and in how you do what you do, because you're unapologetically you, and your company is unapologetically Hostaway. How is that company vibe in like, how is that you mentioned, the mantra of your company, and the last thing you're saying, like how is this, metal esque vibe. I know you like seeing you at shows. You got your Metallica esque t-shirts on. I love it.
First got the best rock star here in the business. Let's
Absolutely.
make it very clear. And when you step in the room, people see you, they see the shirts, they see the metal vibe. And if they get with it and they understand it, like the Wire reference, if you know, you know. But but it works, right? Like in is that you being your authentic self within this space?
Absolutely,
Is your authentic self
100%. Because before Hostaway, I dedicated my life to being someone who I wasn't. I mean, even as a child, I grew up in a neighborhood where we shared a school with some of the richest people in Finland, but it's very diverse in Finland. You don't have the poor live in the same place as the rich, and they share the school. So I got to see great wealth. So I spent my whole childhood trying to figure out how can I be, like those guys, not like these losers over here. And then I think the culmination and reason I have long hair today, I moved to Amsterdam, to the Netherlands, and I got a really nice job. It was actually traveling around the world buying businesses, not for me, but for the company I worked for. And one day I showed up at the office and I was working directly under the CEO, and he started screaming at me. And he was screaming for 1 hour and then told me to just go home and let's start over tomorrow. So I went home. The reason he was screaming at me, and I later found out that the rest of the office could hear it. It was so loud. Was that morning when I had shaved, there was one hair left right here, just one. And that was enough to justify 60 minutes of screaming. That day, I was not going to meet anyone. I was just going to work at the office answering emails.
So you missed a neck hair.
Yes.
Jeez.
And of course, that's when I realized, okay, well, if I want to grow back the hair that I had as a teenager in a heavy metal band, then I won't be able to do it here. And it was somewhere along the line. Yeah, that's basically when, yeah, he also took me to buy a suit. I came in a suit and he said one day, your suit sucks. I'm gonna buy you a better one. And he did, which is great. But he was trying to mold me, or I was trying to fit into something that I wasn't. I don't like suits. I don't want to. I want to shave, but on my terms, not on someone
Right.
else's terms. And that's why at Hostaway we used to have offices, but with COVID we shut them down. Now I don't want an office. If someone in our team wants an office, they just go and get whatever co-working space they want. If they want to group together, we'll rent them an office. I don't want to be there. I want to sit at home and work here. And if people want me to be in an office, then they're working for the wrong company. I set my own rules. And if people want me to cut my hair, well, then they're working for the wrong company. It's that simple.
Right. Love it.
Well, how did that work for you? Because that's a newer thing, right? And even the relaxing of work rules and places, like I hope he wasn't like cotton swabbing your face when you walked in too to ensure that like the shave was closed. But like this is not a normal thing, even when I got into the industry in my first event, I was overdressed and people let me know, like, why are you dressed like that? Like, this is vacation rentals and things like that. But, you've seen corporate culture relaxing upon generation, right? Like you have business casual now, and now people work from home and like the rules have completely changed. What does that do from a cultural standpoint? And how do you at Hostaway ensure that you're allowing people to be professional, but also be their authentic selves? Like letting their rock star come out at work, but also making sure that they're a rock star in the things that they do.
Yeah, so I said before we started the recording that I'm very much into the no BS, and in the corporate world that's called office politics. Office
Right.
politics is basically where you refuse to collect data points and facts that lead you to the right decisions, and instead you favor opinions based on who is saying them. So you pick favorites, and those favorites can be picked by things like how they dress, or where they work, or where they live, or what music they listen to. And that's no way to run a company. I know that's exactly how many companies, especially larger organizations, are run. I'm going to give promotion to that one because he likes the same music as me, and that's perfectly okay. But that is absolutely not tolerated here. We measure our results by numbers, and by numbers only. And if you want to sit in your underwear in a meeting with the camera off all day, but your numbers are great, that's your choice. If if you wanna dress up, if you wanna wear a suit and go to an event, go ahead. We'll send you there. We'll fly you first class, as long as the numbers add up at the end.
Right.
And we pretty much empower all our employees to do whatever they want.
I
But
I
it's about the
absolutely love
metrics.
that, yeah, Marcus. I did, I've been kind of beating this drum for a while. It's like everything should be on, on merit and merit alone, and not on anything other than merit in the corporate and workplace. And we're starting to slowly see it, but not, the Hostaway experience, as far as working for us, seems like a breath of fresh air. I love that. Not that I would ever sit in my underwear all day long 'cause I'd freeze. I'm also up north in my basement, but I might do it if I was to live down in Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't do all that, but
Yeah.
these people in my grid, guess what? For no.
um,
Well, running a company by numbers, that's something that everyone says, but it's incredibly difficult to do. I mean, it's very easy to run the company once you have it set up, but
right.
setting it up is not an easy project. I think we had set it up before we even had our first staff or our first customers or our first products, but then those numbers and measurements that we have set up, they we had to make so many changes in the beginning that none of them were actually relevant anymore.
Right.
And then I think it was after COVID, we let around 40% of our staff go simply because we didn't have money. But that's when we took about a year and we revamped all our numbers, and we made sure that they're so solid that you can wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me any metric and I will know them. And then we made sure that that culture goes through every team. So you wake up one of our account executives in the middle of the night, they know exactly how much they sold this month, they know what their quota is, how much they sold last month, and they know which position on the leaderboard they have. And that's what we want. Every service rep knows exactly what their first response time is, their customer satisfaction rate, and how many tickets they answered this month.
Love it. Hey, Marcus, I know we got to go. I want you to leave us with this. It's a Tuesday. I do this thing called Tuesday Tunes on LinkedIn. I'm gonna go ahead and hit you up on LinkedIn. So look for it. But for us today, what are you listening to right now? If you were to go ahead and put your AirPods on, or what are you listening to?
So me and my co-founder, we have found out that while we really enjoy each other's company and we get along together, I'm a Metallica person and he's a Megadeth person.
Okay.
And those two don't go well together. David
No.
Mustaine used to be Metallica and then got kicked out somewhat and started his own band and never were able to get quite the success, but still, according to many, he is much more successful than Metallica can ever be. So I have to go with Lux Eterna, Metallica's new single. I love it, and I especially love. Let me show you. I especially love how Kirk Hammett there is playing an LTD. Now, do you two know about guitars?
I don't, but I know when you said LTD, it's a guitar. My wife is the metal
Yes.
of
So
the.
you can show her this. So actually, what Kirk did, I don't know in the recording, but for that song, which is a new single out by Metallica called Lux Eterna from their new album called 72 Seasons coming up soon.
I'm gonna listen to it.
He has a cheap guitar in the music video, an $800 guitar. So I got so inspired, that I went and bought a used guitar just last week, and
Okay.
it's his signature model, the Kirk Hammett KH2, but the purple sparkle model.
Nice, nice.
That's
Those
neat.
those of you that are just listening to podcasts,
And
you check
usually
it
you
out.
have to wait to find the ESP version, but I think if it's good enough for KH right here, then
Yeah.
I can do the LTD version as well.
There you go.
crazy,
Nice.
But my fun fact, my football, when you play football, my recruiting tape was set to Metallica's Enter Sandman. So like that was always our pre-game like hype music. Yeah, I've been a Metallica fan forever. So kudos. We'll go on.
Nice.
But when I met my wife 22 years ago, she was listening to stuff like Acid Bath, and and I'm like, what the hell? Love it. Yeah, it's kind of turned, but it's pretty interesting. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us. It's been refreshing. Congrats to you. Congrats to the success of Hostaway. I'm so excited to see. We're excited to see and follow your trajectory. It's amazing and refreshing, and we really appreciate you joining our podcast.
Yeah, man, we're
Thank you.
excited to see your success, and we'll love to have you back on and see where you're taking Hostaway in the future. So
Let's do it. Give me 24 months, and I'll take over the world. Let's talk then.
All right, there it
There
is.
you go. There you go.
This podcast is a Hospitality.fm production.